Meteorologist Brian Wolf here to give you a behind the scenes on Thursday, January 2nd forecast for this approaching winter storm Blair that's coming into the Ohio River Valley and going to impact a pretty large area of the United States, all the way from Alabama, Mississippi with thunderstorms and rain into Tennessee with that as well, and then Illinois, Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky, Missouri, and then eventually points off to the east. So definitely something we need to break down, and we'll just hop right into it. For today, I'm just going to focus on the GFS model. The Euro is still kind of spitting out its data, so while it's doing that, at the time we recorded this, just going to go with the GFS. So if we just start off and just look at where the latest GFS, the 12Z run for the low pressure system, again, you're going to get the heaviest snow about 100 miles north of the low pressure track. So if we go ahead and put this into motion, and then we'll slow it down and look from there, you see the storm system's coming in, and then it crosses the region and is out of the area, sometime around Monday at noon, Monday afternoon. So if we walk back and forth, and now that we're about 3 days out, 2.5 days out, the one thing I noticed from the latest Euro and GFS model is that they are starting to align. They are now coming into agreement what areas are going to see mix, what areas are going to see snow, what areas are mainly going to see rain. So now it really comes down to actual atmospheric science, being able to evaluate and predict what's going on vertically as you start at the ground and head up into the atmosphere, because that is incredibly important for this system. So if we look, you're going to see snow and mix and rain is going to start to break out across, western Missouri. Probably if we go back in time, that's going to start breaking out, around late Saturday night, and then you start early morning hours on Sunday. So it continues to approach the area, and you can see that starts spreading across Illinois very early into Sunday morning, probably around midnight, 1 a.m. And then it will start getting into Indiana right around probably 6 a.m. or so. And again, that's the timing now. This is a snapshot. Things will obviously refine. One of the things I want to caution you about with this is that this low pressure system isn't, it's not like it's going to be in existence for a long time from the West Coast to where the computer models can start to really gather information on it. This low pressure is going to form, and it has yet to form. So with that comes uncertainty. So when it does form, the models will probably adjust and wobble a little bit to kind of refine. So even though the models are agreeing, doesn't necessarily mean you're 100% going to get what they show. And again, I'm just being honest with you, it is very tricky to forecast these types of systems that have mixed precip and warm air advection, where warm air is moving from one area into another, which we'll look at in a second. So that's why I've not given any totals. I will give totals as we get closer to the event, but if I want to be anything for you, it's going to be an honest meteorologist that's not going to try to hype and say, oh, you could be looking at a foot of snow for this area, and then change their opinion 6 hours later. I don't want to do that. So you need to be prepared for everything. And right now, if you're across Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, you need to be prepared for a combination of snow, sleet, freezing rain, or all snow or all rain. So as this system comes in, I want to point out that this low has moved further to the north, where it's just south of the Ohio River. A couple things with that. That means we're going to be seeing a mix across the large majority of southern Indiana. Also, it means you're going to see warmer temperatures, and you're going to see that rain area get up, maybe even into southern Indiana, southern Illinois, southern Ohio. But also with a low pressure system like this, with a winter storm, there is an area right just north of the low, okay, where you'll see a lack of precipitation once that low gets close enough. Because as a low wraps around, okay, counterclockwise, you're going to see an area that's going to see a forecast of a certain amount of precip that doesn't actually end up seeing it. So something to be cautious about as we go forward. Let's look at what the GFS shows in terms of total snowfall We'll go ahead and play this out. You will see there's a small clipper system that's going to affect, we'll just stop that here. Small clipper system is going to affect Iowa, northern Illinois, and then it's going to kind of come down across Indiana, down just north of Cincinnati and off towards West Virginia where it'll pick up the amounts. This is going to be very light, dusting, flurries, some snow showers. You'll see some pockets of maybe a half inch, an inch if you're very fortunate, but that is later tonight and tomorrow morning. Then we get into the big show here, and you can see it start to break out across northern Missouri and then across really central Illinois. We'll go ahead and play this out. So the GFS now has, I mean, like if you're in Indianapolis, for instance, or if you're in, I guess just north of St. Louis, central Illinois, I mean, you could be looking at very easily over a foot of snow, okay? And in these areas, you're likely to just stay all snow. Again, this is spitting out the total snowfall prediction from this GFS model run at 12Z today. If you get down towards southern Illinois, I mean, I want you to look. You've got sharp cutoffs, right? I mean, you've got this line between purple and blue that's indicative of 8 inches of snow. You go 20 miles south, it's 5 inches of snow. That's also due to your mixing in sleet and freezing rain. That line's going to pretty much go from west to east over towards Cincinnati. Right now, Cincinnati shows 10, 11 inches. But I want to caution anybody that's watching this from Cincinnati, if this moves north 20 miles, you all of a sudden are going to be maybe 3 inches. So I want to caution you when you listen to meteorologists on TV, on the internet, etc., that this has what I like to call a bust potential, where it can be hyped up where you're going to see a foot of snow and then a last second jog of the low pressure system to the north and you end up with 3 inches and that's considered a bust. So again, be very cautious of that. But I'm looking at areas, southern Indiana, I mean, you've got 1, 2, 3 inches of snow. You can kind of see where this has moved it further to the north. So that means we've opened ourselves up to sleet and freezing rain. So if we switch over to sleet and freezing rain, and let's look at what this is showing. This is where things get tricky. And this is where, I'll pause it, this is where things get dangerous. So you really need to be prepared and you need to be cautious about this. So we'll run this forward here. This is the amount of freezing rain. Now I'm going to pause this. You can see, I mean, you've got a mix now up to Bloomington. So I'm going to say right now, based on this model run, Indianapolis and north of St. Louis, kind of, and north of even Cincinnati. I mean, this right here is showing Cincinnati with 0.3 of an inch of freezing rain. You got some areas in here across southern Indiana that's upwards north of 0.75 of an inch of freezing rain. Areas out in, east southeastern Missouri and southern Illinois. I mean, look at this, an inch of freezing rain. And we don't get a lot of ice storms around here, and I don't want to scare anybody by throwing out that term, but as we are going forward and we start to get close enough where you start to see the National Weather Service issue watches and warnings, I wouldn't be surprised to see freezing rain warnings, ice storm watches, and potential warnings in some areas. Again, caution you, 2.5 days out, things will change. But one of the things we look for in weather are trends. Okay. Well, if you've been watching these videos from a couple days ago when I started to now, the trend has been that this storm has moved north. Okay. And with that, you've seen a growing amount of freezing rain and a growing amount of sleet. Now, there is a very subtle difference. There's a very obvious difference between those two, but a subtle difference in the atmosphere. I want to show one reason behind that. So if we look at the 850 millibar temperature, height lines, and winds, as this system plays forward, here is why we are going to see this. You're going to see a surge right here. Classic example of what's called warm air advection. That's where warm air moves from one area to another. It's where you see these wind barbs that are blowing perpendicular, we've talked about this before, to these temperature gradients. You are going to see, as this low pressure starts to get to, southern Missouri and then starts to move to the east, you're going to see a surge of warm air out ahead of this system, okay? That's what's going to possibly mix in some rain into southern Illinois, southern Indiana, over towards Cincinnati. Probably at one point, all of Kentucky will be rain. That is going to lead us to the scenario of trying to determine, is it going to be snow? Is it going to be sleet? Is it going to be freezing rain? Is it going to be all rain? This has to do with the vertical structure of the temperatures in the atmosphere. Now, this is where I geek out with SKUTs and upper air data. I think it is a very underrated, underutilized forecasting tool for a lot of meteorologists. A lot of people just spit out what the models say. Here at my channel at Big Bad Wolfcast, I am giving you an insight into the actual dynamics in the atmosphere that are leading to this. So let's cover this. I borrowed this graphic from the National Weather Service in northern Indiana. Fantastic graphic, but this shows how you get the difference between the different types of precipitation in the winter. If you start at the ground and you go all the way up and it stays below freezing, 32 degrees Fahrenheit or 0 degrees Celsius, it's going to stay all snow. Those snow crystals, as they're falling, will not melt. Now, if you have these snow crystals and they fall through an elevated, we call this an elevated warm layer, and let's say that it falls through this elevated warm layer, but as you can see, it's not real thick. Then what happens is those snow crystals will partially melt. They won't all the way melt, but they'll partially melt. Well, then they've got a larger area of below freezing air to fall through to refreeze, and that's how you get sleet. Okay. Freezing rain, on the other hand, you have a much thicker layer of warm air, which is going to melt those snow crystals down. But then right above the surface, you have this really thin layer of freezing cold air. And what happens is these snowflakes fall, they melt totally, they're total liquid, and then they refreeze. And when they refreeze, it becomes super cooled. So it actually is rain, but when that rain hits an object on the surface of the earth that is below freezing, it will freeze instantly. It hits and it just freezes. It's catastrophic for electrical grids. It's catastrophic for roads that are below freezing. So a lot of rural roads do not handle freezing rain very well, obviously so. And you also see this with trees, right? You see a lot of downed trees, which is what takes down power lines, because you get this ice buildup and that gets heavier and heavier and then it collapses down. And then if you've got a warm layer that goes all the way from an elevated point in the atmosphere down to the ground, then you have rain. So I've pulled up a few SKUTs to look at. This one is from South Central and down by about Evansville. So I want to kind of go forward again. This orangish brown here at the bottom is the surface of the earth. And then as you go further up, you're higher in the atmosphere. This diagonal dashed blue line is freezing. So anything, this red line here, if it stays to the left, if it stays over here, it's below freezing. So if you want all snow, that's what you want. If it gets to the right of this dashed blue line, then that's when you've got an area that's above freezing. So let's see what happens. And again, this is around Evansville, right? Southwestern Indiana. If we actually move forward in time, and we're right now, if you look here at the bottom, you're 7 a.m. Sunday, everything looks good at this time. But if you continue to move it forward, what are you seeing happening, right? You're seeing this temperature at the surface, at the ground, it's below freezing. But above, you've got this elevated warm layer. So immediately, not knowing anything else, just looking at this, I can tell you that around Evansville, with this current GFS model run, at 1 p.m. on Sunday, you're going to be experiencing sleet or freezing rain. Okay? Again, that could change based on timing of, does the low pressure arrive faster or slower. But what we've got to look for now is how thick is that? If it's a thick elevated warm layer, then you're looking at freezing rain potential. If it's thinner and smaller, then you're looking at possible sleet. Right now, I just want to point out, this is a very thick elevated warm layer. And the surface is, minus 3.1 Celsius. So this right here is saying that Sunday afternoon in Southwest Indiana, you're looking at, you're likely looking at freezing rain. Right. I don't know if you've ever experienced it. For a meteorologist, it's fascinating. For other people, it may be frightening, where you look outside and it's 28, 29 degrees and it's pouring rain. It's a very unique phenomenon that a lot of people across the Ohio River Valley are going to experience. I'm going to pull up, let's pull up Indianapolis, for instance. If I pull up Indy, and let's look at Indy, and we'll back this up. Okay, so here we go. Sunday, January 5th, 8 a.m. This is Indianapolis. So again, dashed blue line, that's freezing. If you're getting all snow, you want to see this solid red temperature line being to the left. So let's rock forward. Okay, this is 3 p.m. Sunday. Remember, at this time, Evansville's experiencing freezing rain. But as we continue to go forward, you don't see an elevated warming layer in Indy. So right now, the 12Z GFS model is spitting out that Indy's going to be all snow. And that's why you see those weather models put out snow total outputs of 14, 15 inches for Indy. I'm not saying that right now. I'm not confident enough this far out, and especially with this much uncertainty with warm air advection, to give out amounts. But you can just simply see the difference there. Let's open up another one and look at another SKU-T here. Let's look at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's kind of interesting, right? In between Evansville and Indy in terms of latitude. So if we go back to Sunday morning, all is well, probably starts all as snow. And then all of a sudden you see we're 6 p.m. Sunday. Now, this is not as thick as an elevated warm layer in Cincinnati. So from this data, this snapshot in time, I could see sleet. I could see sleet occurring. That snowflake's going to fall, it's going to partially melt, and then it's going to refreeze at the surface. Okay. Point being, and I'll wrap this up, any sort, when you're dealing with a winter storm, of sleet or freezing rain that mixes in, even if just for an hour, will drastically lower your snowfall totals. So keep that in mind as you're hearing TV personalities and internet hype personalities talk about snow potential. If you mix in sleet for 2 hours, you could reduce 4 inches of snow off your total. And so that's something that I want you to keep in mind. But again, stay tuned here to Big Bad Wolfcast here on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Like, share, follow, subscribe, so we can get more videos and updates to you. I'll be going live on TikTok at Big Bad Wolfcast at around 5 p.m. Eastern Time today to share with you the latest model updates and answer any of your weather questions. As always, have a plan for some winter weather and stay safe.